Let's shift gears to the housing market here. Housing affordability challenges are showing up more and more in the data here. A new Redfin survey finds nearly 1 in 5 house hunters are willing to sacrifice their physical safety to find a home that they can afford. Here with more on the report, we've got Daryl Fairweather, who is the chief economist over at Redfin. Daryl, great to see you here with us. Take us into what we're finding in this kind of result, because it's interesting where there is, whether it's the proneness in one area to experience more hurricanes or, other factors that buyers are willing to say, you know what, we're going to take on that risk. Maybe we'll just purchase better home insurance, but this is the house that we've settled on and that's what we're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that one of the more surprising things in the survey was that concern about crime was in the top 5. It was actually tied with being close to family as a reason that people were moving, which is not something I would have expected. The normal reasons people move are related to affordability or wanting more space. Climate is a bit lower down on the list. I was surprised to see safety and crime so high up.
Interesting. Also within this, 1 in 4 house hunters willing to trade off access to quality schools. What do you think was kind of playing into that result?
I think it just comes down to affordability. Neighborhoods that have high quality schools, the homes tend to be more expensive. And especially for people who have really young children who aren't able to go to those schools yet or who don't have children at all, trading that off is an easy way to save on the price of the home.
Was there any noticeable difference across the generations that were surveyed here? I mean, we're like, as we're thinking about so many of the new home buyers that are just trying to get into the market right now, a lot of Gen Zers, a lot of millennials.
Well, young people, they were some of the most willing to make sacrifices, whether that be being in an area that has more crime or being in an area that has fewer restaurants or fewer amenities. And I think that comes down to, well, they're going to get whatever they can afford. It was really difficult. It's been really difficult to break into the housing market because there's such low inventory. So home buyers overall are just having to figure out what can they get that's within their budget, given what's available on the market.
There have been a few reports, and I mean, your team puts out so much data. It's amazing to even try to track it on a day in, day out basis. But there was another report that was published talking about the thousands more people moving in than out of some of the fire and flood prone America, fueled by migration to Texas and Florida. I wonder what you're seeing in the thought process around those home buyers and those who are migrating as well.
Yes, during the pandemic, when the mortgage rates were low, a ton of people moved into the Sun Belt, primarily Texas and Florida and Arizona. And there's been a lot of building there, too. A lot of developers got into the market. That's why we've seen a bit of a price correction in places like Austin. In Florida and Houston, though, we're seeing softness in terms of prices more because of how much maintenance costs have gone up and HOA costs and insurance costs. All of those are related to inflation, but they're also related to the frequency of natural disasters, which, the climate overall plays a huge role in that. So we've seen some softness in Florida. We're tracking whether that's going to continue going forward. I know that, hurricane season is upon us. So we'll see how the frequency of disasters impacts people's willingness to live in those areas.
Yeah, and we've been keeping tabs of those billion-dollar disasters as tracked by NOAA as well here. What should people remember about insurance and their coverage and the protections that they're getting if they are moving into some of those areas?
Well, insurance costs can vary widely depending on where you're buying a home, because the insurer is taking into account how prone that home is to a disaster that would require an insurance claim. That could be wind, it could be hail, it could be hurricane. Flood is usually a different type of insurance. So if your area is in a flood-prone place, you should look into flood insurance as something that's supplemental. There's also a national flood insurance program. One thing just keep in mind is that just because you get a certain quote today does not mean that's the quote you're going to get moving into the future. Insurers can raise costs on you, or they can pull out of states, as we've seen in California and Florida. So I think people should just be ready to pay more in insurance moving forward.
Daryl, great reminders there. Great to see you, and thanks so much for the insights. Daryl Fairweather, who is the Redfin chief economist.